You gotta be flipping my flapjacks, folks. I'm in shock right now. Absolutely in shock. I have so much to take you through. We gotta talk about so many different stocks. So much going on in the market. Fundamentals are completely changing for certain stocks going forward. It's a busy video. I just want to get straight into this. I appreciate everybody being subscribed. What a time to be in the stock market. The most hated bull market I've seen in my 15 years being in the market. It rolls on, okay? Nvidia is making a shockingly big move after hours. The stock's up to $361. By the way, this was at the start of the prep of this video. It was actually significantly higher by the time I was done prepping this video, okay? But a lot of people were shorting the stock, buying put options, thinking this move's not sustainable. AI is just, a buzzword. Everybody's talking about it. Oh, did that get thrown out in these earnings? Oh my gosh, okay? What's crazy about this stock price move is this is a stock you could pick up for less than $110 9 months ago. 9 flipping flapjacking months ago, you get the stock for less than $110. And I can tell you by the end of the prep of this video, the stock was pushing close to $400 a share. That is incredible, okay? Now, when you look at the numbers here, we have a lot of differing information, okay? First off, as far as the headline numbers, it looks great, right? Earnings per share beat very nicely as far as what analysts were expecting versus what the company was expecting. Revenue came at $7.2 billion versus $6.5 billion was expected. That's a very nice beat there, okay? Now, when you look at these numbers, this is not impressive, okay? This is not the impressive part. The next part I'm going to get to is why you have to throw out every forward P calculation, forward price to sales ratio, everything based upon what I'm about to show you in just a minute. But in terms of these numbers, this isn't good, okay? Revenue was actually down almost over $1 billion on a year-over-year basis. Cost of revenue didn't even go down close to $1 billion, which, if that's the situation, your gross profit's going to erode in a massive way, and that's exactly what happened for Nvidia here, right? Research and development, sales and general administrative, they grew those a little bit. That's not too much, right? No, there's a trick here. Okay, so last year they had an acquisition termination cost of $1.3 billion last year. Well, guess what? They didn't have that cost this year. So it looks like income from operations was up nicely year over year, right? $2.1 billion income from operations this year versus $1.8 billion the same quarter last year. But in reality, their income from operations last year, if it wasn't for this termination cost, would have been $3.2 billion, somewhere in there roughly, right? And so ultimately, their income from operations, if you take out this termination cost, would have actually been down over $1 billion on a year-over-year basis, okay? And you look at their net income, and it looks like they grew net income year-over-year, right? $2 billion in net income versus $1.6 billion in net income in the same quarter last year. But really, their net income should be down on a year-over-year basis if you didn't have this one-time termination cost in there. So that's something to keep in mind. But what I just showed you there is actually completely irrelevant, folks. This changes everything for Nvidia forever. Look at this. The company just said they're going to do revenue of $11 billion for this coming quarter. Now you might say, okay, it's a big deal, $11 billion. If you don't have anything to reference off of, that doesn't seem that insane. This is probably the most insane beat in terms of a guide beat I've ever seen in my 15 years of being in the stock market for a big company. I've never seen something this insane in my life, okay? Analysts were expecting the company to do $7 billion next quarter. I don't even know where to start with how big of a beat that is on terms of revenue. I mean, we're talking about a $4 billion beat. Even on the high side, analysts were expecting like $9 billion on the high side, right? Or actually, the high estimate was $8.69 billion. So they just blew, even the most bullish analysts on Wall Street, they blew their numbers out of the water, and it's not even remotely close. Okay, this changes everything forever in regards to Nvidia. This also proves AI is for real. This isn't just some buzzword. This is about to take off like a rocket ship. But in terms of Nvidia, people are still using these, looking at PE metrics, forward PE metrics, trying to judge the stock and saying it's overvalued. You can't even value this company right now. When a company comes in and says they're going to do $11 billion for the next quarter, when analysts were all $7 billion, that fundamentally changes everything. That changes fundamentally the numbers for this year, the numbers for next year. It changes what EPS is going to be, net income is going to be. All these EPS projections the analysts had out there are so low from what the company's actually going to report now at this point in time. The analysts are going to have to go on the biggest binge we've probably ever seen for a big company ever in terms of bringing up their EPS estimates, in terms of bringing up their revenue estimates. And so therefore, the company, believe it or not, could actually, going into these earnings, was actually probably really undervalued. And that's insane to think about for a stock that went from, less than $110 to $300 in a matter of 9 months. But the fact is, when you have a fundamental change like that, everything's changed forever. If you are saying Nvidia is overvalued, you simply are not looking from the right frame of thought, because you got to understand all the numbers you think you're looking at that you think are real numbers are not real numbers. That forward P you're looking at, it's not real. Wait to see the actual forward P. It's not even close to what the analysts have out there. Nvidia is going to blow those numbers out of the water. It's not even it's hard to even comprehend. I mean, Nvidia could double up, triple up, quadruple up the EPS estimates that people are expecting when you have this shocking of revenue beats coming in, okay? Now, I've told people this time and time again, and if you watch the channel, you've heard me talk about this for months, because I've seen the obsession, absolute obsession, with people wanting to short Nvidia stock and buy put options, and specifically from the retail side. And even one of my favorite YouTubers on the platform, who I have a great deal of respect for, he's always hell-bent on speaking bad about Nvidia, right? And I love that guy, but it's just he's got this one wrong, right? And we get stuff wrong sometimes. And I told you guys time and time again, don't mess. It's not worth it to mess with this one. Get out of the way. You don't have to buy the stock, but get out of the flipping flapjack way. Once I found out in February, the company was selling these AI chips for anywhere between $10,000 and $30,000. That was it. It was get out of this stock's way, okay? Don't mess around with shorting it. Don't mess around with put options. You got to understand, companies are ordering hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of these chips. Run the math. Run the numbers on if they sell 10,000 chips at $20,000 average selling price, and tell me what that adds up to, okay? And the thing is, with these AI chips, this is going to be a multi-year cycle. So it's not like this is just a one-off. It's like these orders are going to roll in for years and years to go in the future, right? Now, Nvidia obviously has a big advantage here in the AI market. In the short term, at least. AMD is on their tail. AMD will be coming into this market in a much more substantial way, and could potentially even take some market share from Nvidia. And so AMD is benefiting from this move in regards to Nvidia as well, right? Stock's up about 6% after hours. I've seen it up as much as even 7 or 8% after hours. We'll see where AMD is, but it should be a very, very good day for AMD and for Nvidia. So the bottom line is, if you have been shorting the stock, buying put options on the stock, it's been blind belief that hoping it's going to go down or something like that. Because when you got to understand, when you are getting these sorts of prices for these chips and you have the demand that's coming for, you get out of the way of that, man. You get out of the flip and fly. You don't have to buy the stock. Just don't mess with it, man. It's not worth it. Speaking about stocks to not get in the way of, Elf on a flippin' flapjack and shelf. Oh my gosh, okay? They just reported earnings after the bell. Obviously, all the news is around Nvidia, so a lot of people gloss over the ELF numbers. Didn't even know ELF reported after the earnings, okay? Well, ELF's up double-digit percentage after hours, and I wouldn't be surprised if this stock's over $100+ quickly here, as in potentially even tomorrow. We'll see what happens here, okay? So here's what happened with ELF. Analysts were expecting 20 cents of EPS for this current quarter and about 48% revenue growth. Now, first off, who's growing revenue 48%? No one's growing revenue 48% in this past quarter. I mean, I can't, no one's growing those sorts of numbers. That's ridiculous, okay? They just came in and they absolutely, positively obliterated. I mean, absolutely obliterated those numbers in such a shocking manner that throw out any forward P metrics you have for the stock, any forward price to sales metrics, because they're completely irrelevant now at this point in time, folks. Look at this. Net sales increased 78% on a year-over-year basis. 78%. Gross margin increased 470 basis points to 69%. Remember, Nvidia, ELF is not a SaaS business, okay? They sell physical products, and their gross margins are 69%. It is insane, okay? In terms of EPS, they easily beat. 29 cents came in on a GAAP basis. They reported 42 cents on a non-GAAP basis, or adjusted diluted earnings per share, 42 cents here. I mean, this is a stock you get out of the flipping flapjack and way, folks. You get out of the way in regards to this one because it's a freight train coming through. Now, that's just a start. Here's the deal. The guidance, as far as what analysts were expecting for next year, for fiscal year 2024, right, which is they're about to go into their fiscal year 2024, analysts were expecting 637 million, okay? Even on the high side was 680. What if I told you that ELF smashed the guidance number that analysts were expecting and smashed even the most bullish analysts out there? Here's what they came in with. The company's expecting $705 to $720 million for fiscal year 2024 net sales. That is incredible. And here's the thing. They just sandbagged, in my opinion, they sandbagged net income. This is where actually you'll see like tremendous beats, in my opinion, come quarter after quarter after quarter throughout the year, which will give its next leg up in regards to this whole situation with ELF. So when I look at ELF on a shelf, I mean, the execution does not get better than this. It does not get better than this. It is absolutely incredible. They're arguably the most well-run company in the world. And that's saying a lot because this is just a small company. But who else is putting up these sorts of numbers? Who else just put up 78% revenue growth on a year-over-year basis and came in with a guide that just smashed even the highest end analysts, right? I mean, not even Nvidia is putting up these sorts of numbers. This is on a whole other level, man. Incredible. I'm the happiest shareholder of ELF you could possibly imagine, okay? Snowflake. Next up here, then we're going to talk about Palantir, because that's getting really interesting. Have you seen the move in Palantir after hours? Oh, Merry Christmas. So Snowflake after hours down 11.6%. Now, Snowflake's always got thrown in the category of Palantir. I don't know why. It's always been that way for whatever reason, okay? Stock's down big after hours in regards to Snowflake. So first off, I think people are rooting for Snowflake to go down because they just want to say this. Snowflake shares melt. So, look, I mean, it's just so perfect, right? You really want the stock to go down just so you can say something corny like that. Like, oh, did you see Snowflake shares are melting after hours? Like, come on, man. Okay. Here's the problem. Snowflake had a massive valuation going into, obviously, this earnings, right? They've had a massive valuation for a while, even though the stock's come down quite a bit. Snowflake sees product revenue of 620 to 625 million for the July quarter. The street consensus, meaning average, was at about 649 million. So the company, you can't do this. You can't have a high valuation and come in and miss what analysts were expecting. And that's a pretty decent sized miss too. You can't do that, man. And then in terms of the full year, Snowflake sees product revenue of 2.6 billion. That's up 34% from the previous guidance target of 2.7 billion. You know, for a company like Snowflake with that valuation, if you're starting to talk about 30% growth, it's not exciting for investors. You know, this is a company that very shortly ago was growing 100% plus a quarter. And now you're coming in and talking about 30% growth. You're missing your targets. That's bad, okay? And, you know, I've heard some folks talk about this. I was even looking at comments under the Barron's article, and there was even a gentleman who was mentioning this. And basically, from what it looks like a lot of Snowflake's cost actually goes into the pockets of AWS and Azure, from what I see. And AWS being one of the big beneficiaries of that. So, you know, if you want to play Snowflake's success over time, you actually don't have to play Snowflake if you want. You could just buy Amazon stock. And then you get Amazon, the e-commerce play. You get the cloud business, which benefits from a lot of these companies that build their own businesses on the backs of AWS. I mean, it's just an easy way to do it. I choose my ways. People can choose their ways, okay? But yeah, me, AWS, okay? Now, you ready to see Palantir? You ready to see Palantir after hours, baby? You ready to see this? You ready to see this? 11% move for Palantir after hours, okay? Now, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised Palantir. I was actually, you know what was interesting? I was actually considering buying short-term Palantir calls. I didn't do it, but I was actually considering, because the way I looked at it was like, I thought Nvidia was probably going to come in and report something way better as far as guidance and what people were expecting. Now, I was not expecting 11 billion. That's a whole other number. But I thought, okay, if Nvidia comes in with this big number, okay, as far as guidance, and that proves AI is real. Because up until this point, everybody's been like, well, is this AI thing real? Is this just a bunch of talk and hype? The numbers Nvidia just guided to show you AI is as real gets, and it's not going anywhere, and it's going to get a whole lot bigger from here, folks, okay? Up until literally 2 hours ago, people were like, I don't know about this thing. No longer are people confused. AI is for real. And guess who's arguably the most well-positioned for AI? It is Palantir. So now all of a sudden people are realizing, oh, this AI thing's real. And when Alex Karp, people didn't take serious what Alex Karp said in the latest earnings, right? What did Alex Karp say? He said specifically that he is seeing, what was his exact words? It was something that kind of meant like overwhelming, right? I think it was something like unprecedented demand, right? Something along those lines. When a CEO is saying something like that, he probably means it, right? And look how confident Karp's been lately. There's probably something big, huge going on there in terms of the demand for their product all of a sudden out of nowhere, right? And so when Nvidia puts up the numbers they just put up, and then you have to start taking what Karp was saying on the latest conference call serious in the latest earnings, okay? This AI stuff's for real, and people are realizing it, and that's why the stock's moving. After hours away, it's moving, okay? This is my AI stocks watch list here, okay? Now, this doesn't mean these are the only stocks that can benefit from AI. There can be other companies as well, okay? This is just my personal list for AI stocks. Adobe, Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Palantir, Meta, Nvidia, Amazon, AMD, okay? Obviously, the number one best position for AI, right, artificial intelligence, is Nvidia. There's no doubt about that, right? Because at the end of the day, like, what's going to be the backbone of everything AI? It's the chips, okay? But what's number two? In my opinion, based upon all the study I've done, it's Palantir. They're the second best positioned, in my opinion, in the public market to thrive with AI. And the game changer that's for their business model is absolutely massive, right? The thing with a company like Microsoft, right? You say, okay, they got a massive investment in ChatGPT. That should be hugely successful. So that helps Microsoft, and maybe they have other products and things like that. The problem with Microsoft, it's such a huge business overall. It's a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. To move the needle at Microsoft, it has to be so gargantuanly big, it's ridiculous. Palantir, it's a, $20, $30 billion type market cap. For Palantir, this AI is a fundamental change for their business model in the biggest way possible. And so I've been telling people this is just the start, in my opinion, for Palantir. This is just the start of the turn in a massive, massive way. People have been jumping out of the stock trying to take profits. And I'm just like, I think everybody that's taken profits over this past couple of weeks is going to regret every single share they sold. And I'm talking in the biggest way possible. That's my personal opinion. I could be wrong on that. But when I look at the products that Palantir is out there, then the demand for AI, I don't see there being a situation where Palantir doesn't benefit in a game-changing way for their business model. And not just for like the next few quarters, I'm talking for the next many years. Then you tack on S&P 500 inclusion likely coming at the end of this year or at the beginning of 2024. And it's off to the races, man. And so we'll see what happens there. But don't be surprised if Palantir comes in with much better earnings than expected over the next many quarters. And if they do that, guess what? Analysts have to jump on the bandwagon of upgrades, price target raising, right? Initiations, especially as it gets closer in S&P 500, and then it gets in the S&P 500, you have more analysts coming on, covering the stock. And oh my gosh, it's just a build. It's a snowball effect that is massive. It's an avalanche, okay? Now, in terms of what this means for the market, what's going on here, this is absolutely huge for the overall market. And here's why, okay? This is huge. Nvidia represents, in terms of the Qs, right? Very popular, the Qs, QQQ. Nvidia represents about 5.5% of the weight. It's going to represent even more as of tomorrow. And then AMD represents about 1% of the weight. So you could say, almost 7% of the weight is in those two stocks. Those two stocks are going to be up in an epic way tomorrow, somewhere between, Nvidia's case is probably going to be up between 15 and 30%. 15 probably worst case scenario, 30% probably best case scenario, right? AMD is going to be up obviously in a substantial way tomorrow as well. So it's going to push up the Qs in a pretty epic way. And then you look at it a step further in the S&P 500, Nvidia is over 2% weight, so the S&P 500 should likely see a nice move tomorrow as well. So that just pushes the whole entire market up in general, right? And on top of that, Truflation numbers, I don't think a lot of people are looking at this other than maybe myself and maybe some of you guys. Truflation numbers just hit under 3% for the first time. We've seen those in, I think, probably years. It's been a long flip and flapjack in time. Woo! What a time. What a time to be in the market, folks. I appreciate everybody joining me as always. It's just been a beautiful year. Was it last night or the night before? I actually recorded you guys a free workshop. This is if you would make 100K or less in income. Investing in 2023 and beyond, that should help you out immensely. A ton of tips and pointers in that to kind of get you on the right track. There'll be pinned comment down there if you want access to that. It's absolutely free. Enjoy that. Much love as always. If you want to apply for my private stock group, the private wealth group, then check out the description area to take your game to the next level, and have a great day.